Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shulman, when you learned that conservative groups were being targeted by the IRS for discriminatory treatment, what did you do?
When I learned of the existence of a BOLO list, in that same conversation or right around that time, I also learned a couple things. One, that it was being stopped. So that.
All right. And who told you it was being stopped?
That's Steve Miller, my deputy.
All right. And did you investigate further? Can you give me the name of a single person who was involved in the original decision to target conservative groups for disparate treatment?
I'm not aware of those names.
Why can't you give me a name?
So at the same time that I learned and that it was being stopped, I was also told that the Inspector General was aware of it.
Mr. Shulman, is the Inspector General the only person who can investigate wrongdoing within the IRS?
My general practice.
Can you answer my question and then you can explain? Is the Inspector General the only entity who can investigate wrongdoing?
Congress can investigate.
How about you? Can you do it?
The practice at the Internal Revenue Service that I inherited.
So if there's inappropriate conduct being done on your watch in the IRS, then that inappropriate conduct can last as long as the Inspector General's investigation lasts. Is that what you're telling me? That you're not going to step in and stop it?
No, what I'm telling you
is, if there's someone wielding a knife in the parking lot, are you going to call the Inspector General? Are you going to wait until his or her investigation is over before you stop it?
When I was told about these allegations, I was also told that they were being stopped, and so that the inappropriate criteria were not being used anymore.
And despite the seriousness and potential criminality of that conduct, you didn't investigate it yourself at all?
So the procedures that I inherited and that my
Mr.
general
Shulman,
practice
this is going to go much quicker if you'll answer yes or no, and then you can explain. Did you do anything to verify that the practice, as insidious as it was stopped?
The Inspector General was going to be looking into it, and that's where
Is it that you can't say yes or no, or you're just choosing not to say yes or no? Can you answer the question, did you do anything personally to make sure that this insidious, discriminatory practice was stopped? Yes or no?
At the time that I learned about it, I also learned two things. The first was that it was being stopped, and the second was that the Inspector
General. And what did you do to verify that it was stopped?
The responsible deputy of the Internal Revenue Service told me it was being stopped. I had no reason to believe otherwise.
Did you investigate why conservative groups were being targeted?
Excuse me?
Did you investigate? So you can't give me a single name. You can't answer the who. Can you tell me the why? Why were conservative groups? Why was the culture such under your watch that an employee felt comfortable targeting conservative groups? Did you investigate that?
From my reading of the report, I can't tell if it was political motivation or if it was tone deaf, somebody trying to expedite a way to
You still don't know that this was political.
Excuse me?
You still don't know that this was political?
I defer to the Inspector General.
Well, I'll tell you this, Mr. Shulman. Your predecessor said that he wasn't sure if it was partisan, and that requires the listener to be as stupid as the speaker to utter a comment like that. He just testified that policy positions dictated this. What does that mean to you? If it's not partisan, what does that mean?
I'm not sure I heard that testimony.
Well, we'll be sure and get you a copy of the transcript, and you can supplement your testimony. How's that? Do you agree with Dan Pfeiffer?
Committee's questions.
Do you agree with Dan Pfeiffer that the law is irrelevant, or do you think it is relevant?
I think the law is always relevant.
Do you think 26 U.S.C. 7214, which provides for criminal penalties for this conduct, would be relevant? And did you refer the matter to someone with law enforcement investigative jurisdiction?
A, I'm not going to speculate what's appropriate legally in this matter, and Mr. George, I knew his operation was looking at it, I believe.
I thought it was an audit. I thought he just testified it was an audit, not an investigation. Did you refer it for criminal investigation?
I didn't refer it. It was already being looked into at the time that it was brought to my attention.
So I want to be real clear because my time is out. The only recourse you have when there's an allegation of wrongful conduct on your watch, the only thing you feel comfortable doing is waiting on an Inspector General to finish his or her report.
The general practice is to make sure the Inspector General will look into it.
No matter how insidious the conduct. If it were an allegation of racial discrimination, you would have waited until Mr. George finished his investigation? Is that your testimony?
I'm really not going to answer hypotheticals.
I tell you what, instead of answering a hypothetical, why don't you answer the case at bar today? If there's an allegation that groups are being discriminated against based on political ideology, are you really going to wait until an Inspector General finishes his or her report before you take corrective remedial action?
When I have a fact, but I don't have all the facts, and I don't know the scope and severity.
Did you investigate the facts,
way.
Mr. Schulman? Did you lift a finger to identify the facts?
Felt very comfortable. The facts, the Inspector General was going to run down the facts, and once he had it, it would be reported out.
Let the record reflect that's a no.